One of the tools we use frequently while we're developing is this tool called the iOS simulator. And the simulator makes building and testing iOS apps much easier. Although you should always dedicate time to performing real device testing, using the simulator can greatly speed your code, build, and run cycle. And we can launch the simulator by going up to the Run menu. I currently have the iPhone 5.1 simulator selected, so I can go to the Run menu and run this. This will bring up the application. But the simulator allows us to test different hardware and OS versions. We can do that by going up to the Hardware menu. So we can select different device types. We have iPhone and iPad, both the Retina and non-Retina versions. We can also select different operating system versions. I currently only have 5.1 installed on my machine, so I'm only seeing one selection, but we can have multiples here. We can also test various gestures within the application, so our basic taps and swipe movements. We can tap and hold to swipe. Also, by holding down the Option key, we can perform basic pinch maneuvers. We can also test out rotations. So under the Hardware menu, we can either rotate left or rotate right. This app isn't currently really set up to handle rotations, but this is especially important when we're testing out iPad applications because the expectation is that that app will always handle rotation events. One of the places where the iOS simulator really excels is in testing low memory conditions. Under the Hardware menu, there's a Simulate Low Memory Warning option. In dealing with low memory events within iOS apps is something you have to do all of the time. But unfortunately, trying to test that on the device is really difficult because those low memory events happen in a very non-deterministic manner. So it's not easy to reproduce those on an iOS device. Whereas in the iOS simulator, we simply go up to the Hardware menu and select Simulate Memory Warning. And then we can see what happens with our app when a low memory event occurs. Under the Debug menu, you'll find a few additional useful options. One of the most interesting is this Toggle Slow Animations. So if I click that on, and then interact with my app, you'll notice we get these slow-moving animations. And this can be really nice when you're trying to test out some custom animation, and you can see there's some little glitch in your animation, but at full speed it's really difficult to see. We can flip on slow animations, and then we can more closely keep an eye on what exactly is happening. If at any point in time the state of the iOS simulator gets out of whack, you can always go up to the iOS simulator menu and select Reset Content and Settings. And that will ask you, do you want to reset this? You can say yes. And then I'll actually clear this off and then reset it back to its default state. So if we run the application again, we'll know we're running in a clean state. It's important to remember that the iOS simulator is just that. It's a simulator. It's not a true emulator and does come with some limits. So specifically, there are no caps on memory, graphics performance, or network bandwidth. So your application might absolutely scream while it's running on the iOS simulator, but it runs dog slow when you put it onto an iOS device. So the simulator is great, but you do need to make sure you're running on the iOS device as well to make sure that the performance is really where you expect it to be. Additionally, there's no way to perform complex multi-finger gestures on the iOS simulator. You're really limited to swipes and taps and the basic pinch gesture, but anything that would require multiple fingers, you're not able to simulate that. There are also some general hardware limitations, as your Mac typically doesn't have a camera or a GPS or accelerometer, so you're not able to test those features out as well. You'll also find that some frameworks you'll work with, such as email or SMS or push notifications or in-app purchase, those kind of things you can't test within the simulator as well. Instead, do need to rely on a device. Despite these limitations, with the exception of Xcode itself, the simulator is the tool you'll likely use the most, so become familiar with its features and keyboard shortcuts so you can greatly accelerate your development.